A little update for Myla's family. In this video, I'm working with Myla on some foundation skills. We're playing a game called Look at That, where essentially she looks at the dog and then I follow it with food. You'll notice that when I'm feeding back at me. The goal with that is to manage the duration of exposure that she has to the other dogs to keep her arousal levels within a reasonable kind of window. By feeding her where she has to look away from the other dogs, it just keeps it so that she doesn't get so overstimulated she can't make great choices. We're working on these skills because Myla does love other dogs, but she loves them so much that sometimes she has a hard time breaking away from play. And when another dog wants to break away from play, she's not always really listening to their signals around that. So we're installing a skill that teaches her to check out away from dogs, but we're starting it outside of the context of dog play. You'll notice that I'm waiting for her to actually look at those dogs before I feed her in this clip. And the reason why is that I don't want to just distract her from other dogs. I want her to be able to look at them and then make the choice to look away. And pretty quick, all of these dogs are going to come up and charge the gate. This increased intensity of the distraction means that we're going to be working at a rapid pace. The reason why is that she's going to be checking in with them a lot more. And so the feeding happens a lot more frequently. It's a one-to-one association. Anytime that she looks at those dogs, she gets fed. You can see that I'm selecting out for fake looks there. Okay, so now I'm moving her to a little bit more intensity where I'm actually allowing her to have some face-to-face engagement with the dogs. And then calling her back and feeding at me. So again, managing the duration of exposure and then feeding back at me to provide her a break to bring her arousal levels back down. Essentially keeping her in a thinking brain. And you can see she's doing a really good job with this. I'm increasing duration, but ever so slowly. I should say duration of exposure. She demonstrated some nice skills while she was on leash, and so now I'm actually just letting her drag the leash to test her freedom and choice just a little bit further. If I need to, I can go grab the leash, but my goal is to try and have her disengage on her own. I really want to empower her with the ability to make her own choices in this so that I'm not constantly having to manage her around these other dogs in the long run. And you can see it goes on a little bit here. I do believe I tossed a treat in this case. Yep, there's the treat. And so she doesn't see it right away. I can see that she's starting to get overstimulated. So I point at it and she's like, oh yeah, it was working. So in this clip, Christine is working with her and she has been gone for the weekend. And so we're starting just back on leash to make sure that she's still retained the skills from last week. And she's doing a really good job of checking back in with Christine. And we can see here, there is a good example of how if there's leash tension, it can actually increase the dog's arousal. And so since she had that leash tension present, what we saw is that she was having a hard time breaking away. She's like, I just want to get to Link. And so what we ended up having to do is actually calling her out on that one. And Christine's going to have to call her out again. In this one, we're actually working on relax on a mat around other dogs and making sure that she can settle in their presence. So since we're adding this new skill of laying down on the mat, we have decreased the level of difficulty by increasing distance. So she's further away from the fence. And you can see that she's still incorporating the look at that game. So she looks, and then Christine drops the food to the mat. So this is a couple of days later. We've done a lot of foundation work, and now we're trying to get them into the same space. Right now, Christine is running her through the confidence course, and this is just to make sure that when there's not a barrier between them, she can actually still focus on us. And so she had a little struggle there. Christine's able to bring her back really nicely. Now she is still a puppy, so that second that Christine started digging in her bait bag, she did take her chance to go, but she redirected really nicely. And so since things are going well with this, we're actually going to move to start working them in closer proximity and make sure they can still use their thinking brain while in close proximity. And both of these dogs actually need this skill. You can see that Coco is really bouncy and really excited about Myla's presence. And so at this point, we're actually working on both dogs on these skills. And they're doing well, and so we're going to move them even closer together. You can see Coco did her little check out, check in. She's going to distract Myla, and this is purposeful at this point. And Myla opts to stick with Christine. All right, so here we're moving into a little bit more freedom, and you can see it starts to get a little bit more messy. There are a couple things. So Coco is like a massive jumper, and so you'll notice that when she comes back to me, I never pay her until she's got 4 on the floor, and I often pay her by feeding closer to the ground. Okay, so they're getting together, doing some wrestling. They're going to get totally tangled. This happens a lot when you've got a lot of bouncy puppies, and then we just redirect them out. So back to let me get a skill from you, and I will reward you with engagement. You can see that Christine and I are a little bit off on our timing on that. Our dogs are getting skills at different times. But now that we've got them, we're going to let them engage. Bounce, 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 redirect. And also, we're giving them a little bit longer of breaks in between. And the reason why is that when they're actually engaged, their excitement level goes through the roof. And so they need a little bit longer to calm down between these engagements. And just to be super clear, it's not always ideal to have dogs on leash when they're engaging. Actually, we prefer to do it off leash, but we're not really sure where their arousal is going to be. And so we need an emergency exit strategy in case things get a little bit too exciting. Maybe exciting is the wrong word, a little bit too intense. And so we're going to give them a little bit longer of a break here. And the reason why is that we're going to do some dragline work where they have a little bit more freedom. Now, reviewing this footage, and this is why it's really helpful to take footage, is we see that we went a little bit premature on this. What you'll see is what happens when their thinking brains go away. And so this is also a learning opportunity. We're going to let them drag the leash, and you'll see that they get pretty excited. Coco kind of plows into Myla, and Milo's playing, still pretty bouncy. They're both pretty bouncy, but then Myla gets on top, and she's not letting Coco get back up. Coco is very padded, and so she's not super worried about it, but we don't want Myla practicing that behavior. Ideally, we don't want to do physical intervention, but we have to in that case because she's no longer thinking through what her choices are. So we let it go one more time. And we can see the exact same thing happen. The intensity is really, really high. And when she gets on top of Coco, she's not able to break away. So we're again going to intervene. They're going to go off camera, and I'm actually going to grab Myla and cart her out. We just take this as information that we moved too far too fast. And so we go back to the prior level of skill, and we work there a little bit longer until we see less intensity there. And that's what we'll be doing throughout the next week. Hopefully another update soon.